Welcome to the Business of You podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Gogos. This podcast is dedicated to helping you uncover how to turn your big idea into big business and grow your personal brand into the business of your dreams. Each week, I'll talk to founders of all kinds of businesses, exploring how they launched and grew their companies. Behind every successful business is an epic journey, one that can serve as a roadmap to help you grow yours. The Business of You is all about frank conversations and unique business wisdom for the entrepreneur. It's a chance to tune into the story behind the brand and retrace the path of those who walked this road before you, so you can pave your own road to success. Welcome to the Business of You. Kelly, so great to have you on the show today.
So happy to be here.
I have really been looking forward to this. Would love to start by hearing your story, your journey to growing your empire. I know it's been quite an interesting, windy road, but there's so many things that you've done that are different. So can you start with maybe like what you studied in college? You know, did you always have this entrepreneurial blood within you?
Yeah, not at all. I went to school, I studied communications. First of all, what's interesting is, I went to the school that I was going to be in the least amount of debt, that I had to take the least amount of loans to go to. I think I always knew I was not going to be like a lawyer, a doctor, an accountant. That was not, and my vision was I wanted to be able to do work where I was interacting with people, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, I was like, I could go here, I could go there. I don't need to get into, $200,000 of debt to do that.
Smart.
And that impacted so many other decisions that I ended up making because, I had been a competitive cheerleader and a competitive dancer all growing up. And when I got to Westchester University, which I loved, by the way, but that was the school I ended up going to, horrible dance team, horrible cheer team. Hopefully none of them are listening. And I was like, okay, so I am either going to like really take a step back or I'm going to take a leap forward. And that's actually why I ended up auditioning for the NFL and becoming an Eagles cheerleader, because the team at my school was just like horrible. And I wanted to keep performing and I wanted to keep challenging myself. So that was one of like 5 jobs that I had in college. I was teaching aerobics. I was an NFL cheerleader. I was a cocktail waitress. I was babysitting. I was like all the things. I was waiting tables at a diner, all the things.
Oh my gosh.
But it was amazing because you just learn to be so agile and resistant, resilient. And, that's where I think I learned sales, right? From being a cocktail waitress, I realized, I'm going to spend the same amount of time here. And, I could either make $50 or I can make $500, right? Because it depends on how fast you are, right? So and how well you treat the people that you're serving. So I was like, if I'm going to be here anyway, I'm going to make $500, right? So I was a little hustler. And that's kind of how I started learning about business and sales and stuff like that. But no, I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. That was not my vision or goal. When I graduated college, I joined a Fortune 500 and I did that and took like the most entry-level job that they had because I knew that in a company that large, I could go in and work hard and, kind of hustle and prove myself, and that there would be a lot of upward mobility. And I wanted to create financial freedom. I think, beginning my career, all I was thinking about was like, how do I go from being in a situation where it was, very much about financial scarcity and, all of those things to, having financial freedom. And then it became like, how do you, work your way up as fast as you possibly can and make as much money as you can so you can get out, right? Which is not a way to live. But when I got to the top of, the corporate ladder and I was promoted 7 times in 8 years, and I had the experience of learning business management, leadership, coaching, teaching, training, talent acquisition, all those things, I was obsessed with the work. Like I loved working with people. I loved seeing talent, seeing in someone what they don't yet see in themselves. And then like pulling that out of them, right? Yeah. And, for me, the kind of the why behind starting my business was I was like, I want to do what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. But I want to do it in a way that I actually am really making a difference in the world changing families and impacting, their lives versus just making this one corporation like millions of dollars. And so I decided to take what I had learned in corporate and start helping small businesses grow. And that was really, in 2012, I started my first business, doing sales training and coaching and basically helping small businesses to understand systems for growth, because I knew that there was a really high failure rate in the entrepreneurial world. And I was like, if everybody knew what I knew in the small business world, like people would be, the failure rate of businesses wouldn't be this. And so that was kind of how I got started on that journey.
Hmm. How many years into your corporate job were you that you started your own business?
That's a good question. I'm trying to think the years. I think I was there about 10 years before
Okay.
I started my business. I was there a long time. I mean,
Hmm.
I ended up like I said, I was promoted 7 times in 8 years. I actually ended up being the youngest senior vice president in the company. So I
Amazing.
was managing a team of 100 people. I had
Hmm.
17 locations, and I'm really glad that I stayed as long as I did. I think that for me as a strategist, as a mentor, if I didn't have that longevity and experience behind me,
Hmm.
I wouldn't have the context, like the depth and breadth that I can bring to coaching today
Hmm.
comes from being through so many situations and scenarios and highs and lows and the market crash and, layoffs and, all of these different scenarios, which I think really is what equipped me to be a great entrepreneur, but also to help other people become great entrepreneurs,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, totally.
Hmm.
And you grew that business to seven figures while having a full-time job, and you
I
shared
did.
too also having your daughter. How
I
did
did.
you manage that time-wise?
It was wild, man. I'll tell you what. Well, first of all, I just had to be insanely ruthless with my
Yes.
time. I basically had 3 hours a day to grow my business. So I would wake up in the morning and I would work for about an hour before Billy and Madison were awake in the morning.
Hmm.
I would get ready for work. I would drive into the office. This was back in the day, so we were still going into offices, right? This is
Right.
pre-COVID. So I would, work. I would get ready. I would go into the office. I would then take my lunch break. I would pump and work on my business on my lunch break. And then I would come home. I would have dinner with the family, spend time with Madison, get her to bed. And then I would take client calls and do my launches and doing a lot of my work then at like 8 to 9 in the evening. So it was crazy, but I will tell you, it was like the best training, the best boot camp I ever could have had, because it really showed me that you don't need 80 hours a week to run a
Yeah.
successful business.
Hmm.
And I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs that are very busy being busy in avoidance of the things that really move the needle in business. And because I didn't have that luxury, it was like minute for minute, like I had to really hone in and focus on, content, consultations, and closes. And that was it. It
Mm.
was like, that was it. And then I served my customers. I would do my client calls at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night,
Hmm.
in the evening. But yeah, I think it was for me at the time, I thought it was a huge disadvantage.
Hmm.
And I always felt like sad or like I was behind because I
Mm.
saw all the other entrepreneurs that were like, and then what I realized a couple years in, I was like, wow, my business is actually growing faster than all these other people that are running full-time businesses. And I think it was just because I didn't have a choice. I had to be
Yes.
so laser beamed in on just those things that really moved the needle and mattered.
Mm-hmm. Was it in your coaching business that you developed the live launch formula, or was it after? It was
Yeah,
before.
and it happened. I never was going to teach launching. That was like
Mm-hmm.
the last thing on my mind to teach. But it happened because once I was starting to get really maxed out with one-to-one clients,
Hmm.
I knew I needed a one-to-many mechanism, and I signed up for trainings on webinars, and I did the training on the PLF, and I
Hmm.
did the training on all of the launch models that are out there. So I tried first to go through all of the other systems that people were already teaching. I mean, I don't need to reinvent the wheel,
Right.
but it just wasn't working for me. It was so much complexity. It was so much tech. It was all these pre-recorded videos and slide decks and all of this like added stuff. And for me, I think business is such an energetic exchange. And I think what it
Hmm.
was is like I couldn't connect with people. And I
Hmm.
think when you remove that connection, especially if you're selling like high ticket, And it just didn't go well. And so one day I was just like, you know what? I just have to figure out how I'm going to make this work for me. And luckily for me, that was right around the time that live streaming was released.
Mm.
So no one had yet developed a model. That's why it was called the live launch. Right now, everybody calls launching live launch now, but I called it live launch at that time for two reasons. One, because all the launch models that were being taught at that time were pre-recorded. None of them were live. And number two, it was right after live streaming became available. So this was like this is a whole new business model. It was a whole new thing. But yeah, and it was just the moment that I removed all that complexity, I removed all those barriers, I got rid of all that stuff that wasn't resonant for me. I really simplified it. Rachel, when I started teaching live launch, I literally just went live in my Facebook group. I didn't have a landing page. I didn't run Facebook ads. I did not have anything. It was literally me and you sitting on a live stream, and it just exploded. And I think what it was is people were like, yeah, like I want to feel that energetic exchange. And it felt really different to people. And now here we are so many years later. And my God, I can't believe how that's changed our life, my client's life, so many people. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. So you're deep in this coaching business. You eventually leave your full-time job. And I know part of your mission now, you have 6 other companies, right?
Six
And
total.
6 total. Okay, so 5 other companies. And part of your goal that you often market is that you're on your way to $1 billion. How do you strategically plan for that? And how did you go from that 7-figure coaching business
Yeah.
to thinking, I'm going to buy this next, or I'm going to acquire that next, or I'm going to launch this next? What's kind of like your due diligence process?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And people ask me all the time, like, how do you know when it's time to start something new?
Yes.
And what I always tell them is you should have great leadership, an excellent profit margin, a cash cushion, and the ability to remove focus without the business crumbling. And for me, I had built a leadership team. We had been growing really rapidly in the market. We had all of those things in place, and my capacity was outgrowing the team's capacity. Like I was ready to do more. And I knew I was going to create total chaos for the organization if I was like, and we're going to do this and we're going to do this, right? Because complexity kills, right? Simplicity kills. So for me, I began to see other needs in the market that were really obvious gaps that I was like, we can do this. We can do this better. We can fill this gap in a meaningful way, and we can outperform the other options in the market. And that's the other thing I would say. I think a lot of people are opportunistic, right? Where they're like, I see an opportunity, I'm going to jump on it. And what I always say to people is, don't sign up to do something unless you are really committed to doing it long term, because everything is exciting and fun at the beginning. And then once you get into it and you're like, this is a lot of freaking work, right? And now you're married to it and you thought it was going to be a lot of fun, right? So for me, I'm always kind of operating on like a 5 to 10 year plan at any given time. You asked the question, like, when we were a 6-figure company, I was planning for 7 figures. When we were a 7-figure company, I was planning for 8 figures. When we became an 8-figure company, I immediately began planning for 9 figures. And the reason why I started splitting out these other companies was not just that I wanted to provide these solutions. Like long term, I wanted to fill these gaps and I wanted to provide these solutions in the market. But also, I don't want my coaching company to be diluted trying to go have 3,000 customers. Right. We are best in class, super high touch, boutique. I say boutique. We're not boutique to a lot of other people. To me, we're boutique, right? Because our objective is to have, the 500 to 1,000 best buyers, not to have 5,000 and then water down what we're doing. So I wanted to keep growing, but I didn't want to dilute the integrity of what we were truly trying to do in the coaching company. And to do coaching well and to do it right, you have to be able to expend an enormous amount of time and effort on a per client basis, especially if you're coaching in business today, because the market is so complex. It's such a hard time that you can't take that lightly, I guess. And I think a lot of people have. It's like sell at all costs. but that's not sustainable because everyone's going to leave because they're not going to get results,
Right.
right? So for me, I both was committed to the solutions and I wanted to deliver the solutions. And also I didn't want to dilute the impact and the value of what we were trying to do in my first business, which is how I built the reputation that I had and how I built, the brand. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
Hmm. I know you're really big on team, and you have an amazing team, by the way, just in having interacted with them
Yeah.
so often. But I wonder when you hire people and you're having them, kind of extend your own coaching methodology and work with your clients, how do you train them without having, say, a certification program in place, which I know
Mhm.
you don't?
Yeah. Yeah, we have a very intensive training process. Like, we spend countless hours with people when they come into the organization, having them shadow calls, go through my trainings, like countless amounts of hours of just learning the language, the
Hmm.
culture, the way that we communicate, the words and phrases that we use. How do we interact with the market? How do we interact with our clients? So I think it's just having a really dialed in onboarding process,
Yeah.
which I think is one of the most valuable uses of time and energy that a company can create because that is going to impact the impact that your staff can make,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And then the other thing is you have to free up bandwidth internally for people to be able to spend time with your new hires,
Hmm.
and you have to be able to give your team space to be able to do that and not feel like they can't fulfill their other responsibilities or their performance is being negatively impacted on the other side. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. What are some of the biggest challenges you see business owners facing today?
How long do we have,
Yeah,
Rachel?
I know. This is the time.
I think that obviously the changes to the market have been
Hmm.
a huge challenge for everyone, right? I think that the market that we're in today very much reflects the market that we were in pre-COVID.
Hmm.
And I think that when there was so much stimulus pumped into the market and when it was so kind of easy to sell, I'll say,
Hmm.
and market, and when people were buying through such a different lens, I think that businesses lost a lot of the rigor and the intensity that it takes to do business.
Hmm.
And I think that a lot of business owners and businesses are still trying to recalibrate and trying to get themselves back to doing business in such a way that is going to succeed in this market, if
Hmm.
that makes sense. Like, I don't even know how to explain it. It's almost like, you're running 1,000 miles an hour in this direction, and then you hit a wall, and now you're like trying to turn,
Hmm.
right, and try to start running in the other direction. And I think a lot of people are still really struggling with that. So it is harder to sell, and people are being more discerning in their buying decisions. And I will say the thing that's different about like now versus pre-COVID, I do believe that this is a much more normal climate from a sales perspective. But I will say that the internet has moved into a new layer of market maturity, and people are much more skeptical, and people have made more decisions online, won, lost, or otherwise.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of hurdles that businesses have to overcome in today's market that they didn't have to even before COVID, because the market had not moved into the level of market maturity that we're in today. It's just like anything else.
Mm-hmm.
As something is moving through those layers of maturity at the beginning of the cycle, everything's new, everything's exciting, everything is like, wow, right? And now people are like, they've been there, they've done that, they've run that race, they've seen that rodeo, they're unimpressed, and if
Hmm.
anything, it's not even unimpressed, they're super skeptical,
Hmm.
right? So I think it's just I think it's a big adjustment for a lot of people right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to continue, I think, for at
For
least
sure.
6 to 8 months, like I
Yeah.
think well past the election,
Yeah, I agree with that.
to
I
really
agree
have
with
time
that.
to recalibrate. Where are some opportunities you see for growth, for businesses, um, kind of like piggybacking off the areas of challenge? I think, there's so many millionaires and billionaires made, right? When markets decline, when there is difficulty in the economy.
Yeah.
So where are you seeing opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are really craving very customized solution right now. So I see a lot of opportunity in customized solutions in any arena. Like it doesn't matter what space you're in. If you can provide a very custom kind of hands-on solution, that's very much in demand. Number one. Number two, this is going to sound funny, but I really believe it to be true. I think the biggest growth play that you can have over the next 12 months is having exceptional customer service. I think people will be so blown away because it's so rare. It's so rare. I mean, think about your everyday, Rachel. I mean, you could go 10 places and 9 out of the 10 they could care less whether they get your business or not. I think the biggest play you can make in the next 12 months to really get your brand to stand out and to drive customer loyalty, referrals, growth is exceptional customer service from every touch point of people, how they interact with your brand. And then the third thing is just, you had mentioned, about how obviously there's always a great wealth transfer when there's an economic decline. And as soon as things slow down, people cut team, they cut advertising, they cut marketing resources, and they cut the extras for their clients. And those are like the four worst things that you could possibly do, right? So I would say just building a little bit of a stomach for it, right? Obviously, when markets go through contraction periods, of course you have to prune, of course you have to be sensitive, of course you can't just be like, oh, we're going to spend the same way we were spending in a market that is growing. But just being very surgeon-like in the cuts that you're making, because I say this all the time, like one of the huge advantages I feel like I've had over the years, which has allowed us to keep growing and growing, is when a lot of people kind of don't have the stomach for the roller coaster, I've always kind of stayed here. And what happens is there's a lot less competition.
Yeah.
So less people are advertising, so your ads perform better, and less people are hiring, so there's better talent on the market, right? Like there's all these advantages if you just like can stay eye on the prize. And things are never going to be good forever. They're never going to be bad forever. They always follow cycles. And I think that's the thing that people forget. When they're good, they think they're going to be good forever. When they're bad, they think they're going to be bad forever, and they're like tearing it all down. And it's like, it's just a cycle.
Yeah.
The economy just runs in cycles. And if you can remember that and you realize it's not going to be forever and that you have to make kind of incremental and strategic decisions, yes, you have to adjust to the circumstances, but the number one thing is not making decisions that are going to cut off your ability to grow in the future.
You've done an incredible job, I think, of also identifying your personal brand and the parts of your business that live under that umbrella versus other parts of your various business brands. What is your thought process as you're growing your personal brand versus growing your business brand and your business portfolio?
Yeah. Well, for me, the way I think about it is my personal brand will stay with me forever. And then when I pass someday, it'll be legacy that I leave behind for people to enjoy. Whereas all of the companies that I'm building are ultimately sellable assets, right? I don't build my companies to sell. Like I'm not the kind of person that there's nothing that I'm building right now that I'm like, yes, I want to get to this level and then I'm going to sell it. And that's my objective. Like I love the game of business. I'm not on a trajectory to try to sell. However, to build a good business, you should build a business that can sell, right? So that's why my companies have names like the Business Advisory, Virtual Business School, the Conviction Marketing Agency, the Advance. They're not Kelly Roach, right? Because I don't want them to hinge on me. I want to have systems, team, and proprietary processes that ultimately can both be facilitated and create repeatable client results without me. And I also want them to be assets that one day can be sold. And, the more that your business hinges on you and is attached to you, the harder it is to have freedom, right? And so that's another thing for me too, is I want to build in such a way that I can prioritize my family and, other things that matter to me in my life. And that means that they can't hinge on me. Right.
Yeah. So true.
Yeah.
So true. With your Conviction Marketing Agency, what was it that inspired you to start a personal brand agency?
Yeah. So I was so angry and so pissed off when all of the trends started blowing up, teaching creators and service providers to point and dance and do trending audios and make these viral videos and do these skits and, all this nonsense. And I was so frustrated because, I think that service providers have such intellect and they have such powerful ideas to share with the world, and they can build their brands by adding value and by bringing a conversation to the market in a unique way that can make a difference. And so I started with the book. I wrote the Conviction Marketing book to really present this model of how you can build your brand without chasing trends, participating in fads, or doing things that are out of alignment for your business. And then from there, people had just been asking us for years and years and years, can you help with my marketing? Can you help with my marketing? And we're like, we're a coaching company. Like, we don't help with marketing, And then we finally came to the realization that, there are a lot of people that have a really good brand. They deliver exceptional customer results. They're great at what they do, but they're never going to be marketers, right? They're never going to be that person. It's like a personality type, right? And so we were like, we understand something probably better than most about marketing personal brands. And we want to be this boutique agency that's selective about getting voices heard that we believe deserve to be heard in the world. And so we started helping people to, put strategy and growth, mechanisms in place for content for personal brands. And that's kind of how it came about.
The birth story.
Yeah.
So I would say, what has it been? About a year or so, maybe a little bit longer, where you've really leaned into one of your personal values, one of your convictions, which is your faith, and really using it as part of you're using it in your marketing. I think you're far more open about it than you have been in the past. What was it that also led to that for you to be open about that?
Yeah, so many things, right? Like, one, I saw the world changing so dramatically starting like a year and a half ago, and I felt that I wasn't doing my part by keeping that private anymore. I had always kept it completely separate. My faith life is private, my business is public, and that was just how it was. And it got to the point where I was so impacted by what I saw happening in the world and how, faith was being pushed out of our culture and society. And coupling that, I saw in the entrepreneurial space this massive rise in mental health issues, anxiety, business closures, depression, divorce, all of these things. And when I really thought about it, I was like, it's because faith isn't part of the conversation. And I really believe that. Like, I really, in my heart of hearts, believe that. I think that running a company is really hard. And I love business and I love running companies. Like, I would never want to be doing anything else, but it is really freaking hard. And I think that if you don't have faith, it's pretty much impossible. And so when I got clear on that, and when I did that reflection for myself, I was like, wow, it's really inauthentic for me to be teaching business strategy and not acknowledging that business strategy without faith behind it, probably isn't going to do what you want it to do, right? And so it was just this realization for me that those two things had to be equally acknowledged as a part of the equation, right? And I went through some really tough things personally. The major lawsuit with a media company, I had to change my brand, change my name, worst experience of my life. It took me to my knees. And the only thing that got me through that was faith. And so that was the other thing. Like, when I went through that experience and I was like, well, how did I get through it?
Yeah.
Faith, right? There's no business strategy that can get you through something like that, right? Okay. And so it was just one of those things where I was like, you know what? I feel like this is a huge part of my calling, and someone needs to take a leadership position on this that has had the level of success that I have, and be like really clear with people that this is the magic behind the magic, so to
Mm,
speak, you know?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I think in the US, within our culture, religion is a polarizing topic.
Yeah.
How have you found your leaning into your faith and being more open about it? How have you found it impacting your business and your marketing?
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, that's the reason why I didn't do it, right? Because it is something really polarizing
Yeah.
in the US. But I decided that I was going to take a position of all are welcome,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I decided that I was going to take a position of like, listen, like, I'm not here to preach at you. I am not here to diagnose. I am not here to tell you how you need to do you. I'm just here to open a door.
Yeah.
And if you want to walk through that door and you want to see on the other side, like, come along with me. Right. And I think there's not a lot of that. I see that there's very aggressive, like, there's two camps,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's the very like fanatical, like very strict, very kind of all or nothing,
Mm-hmm.
camp that I think a lot of people are running away from. And that's why they don't practice faith.
Yeah.
And then there's the people on the other side that are like completely just off the ranch. Like there's no moral compass, there's
Right.
no faith, there's no belief, there's no anything.
Mm-hmm.
But there was no leadership in the middle that was like, listen, like, find your way. Like, find your way. Like, there's 1,000 different paths to connect with your creator, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think the mistake is when humans try to take something that is beyond our comprehension and tell other humans how they need to do it.
Yeah.
Right. Like that's, so, I'm a Christian. Like
Mm-hmm.
that is my belief system. I go to church. I read the Bible. I do Bible study. I study. I pray every day. Like that's my choice. Right. But someone can be an equally good person that's
Mm-hmm.
of any other religion in the world, that has any other faith belief. And it's about a desire to connect with our creator and to go deeper into what's possible in that relationship, for yourself in your life. And I think that that's the stance that I've taken. You said, how's it impacted my business? Surprisingly, it's been great. Like I was prepared for it to not be great.
Mm-hmm.
Let's put it that way. I was definitely prepared for it to not be great. And I was at my breaking point where I didn't care anymore. I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore if I can't talk about this part of it. And so I got myself to the point where I was like, whatever the repercussions are,
Yeah.
I will accept. My answer is yes,
Yes.
whatever that means.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I've been really blessed and really lucky that people have really seemed to resonate and rally around
Mm-hmm.
that.
Do you see a shift in the audience that you're attracting now versus the audience you were attracting before?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So many believers.
Uh-huh.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
It's so cool to see. And different types of believers, which is really cool. And that's my dream and that's my
Mm-hmm.
desire. I don't think there's one way to grow in your faith. I don't think there's one way.
Yeah.
So, my desire is to really build a faith community,
Mm-hmm.
that it's not about a particular doctrine or,
Mm-hmm.
a format or whatever the case. And so, yeah, no, I've found believers everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It's been amazing. It's
Yeah.
been amazing.
How
Yeah.
about just kind of like, I'm curious about this, the nuts and bolts of working with the clientele that you're attracting now? Is there just a different vibe that reverberates like through the whole team? Is it almost, the word easier is coming to my mind, but
Yeah.
because
It's really
values are
interesting.
aligned.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it's still evolving, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because like, Danielle obviously is my right-hand person. Like she's always been a person of faith, always done Bible study, always been someone that, so her and I's relationship has always there's always been like a faith component of that
Yeah.
since we started working together. So in some of my companies, we're a lot further along than other ones, if that makes sense. Like
Mm-hmm.
in the business advisory, where it was my initial company, like some people have come forward like right away and they're like, I'm a believer and I want in on this, right? And then other people are still like, they're like dipping their toe in a little bit. They're like, what is this all about over here? I'm not sure, and so I'm going to let them take their time and, kind of arrive there. But no, it's great. And I'm going to allow it to just keep evolving,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah, totally. Are you working on any new books?
Such a good question. So I wrote a book
Mm-hmm.
about a year and a half ago. And it was about mindset and internal shifts and beliefs and everything that the inevitable millionaire and Kairos are kind of like about. Like it was
Yeah.
about all those things. And for some reason, I was just like, this isn't exactly the book, and this isn't exactly the time.
Mm.
And which is weird for me, Rachel. If you know me, I'm like, pump that shit up. Like, like let's freaking go.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I'm always ready. And so I'm just sitting with that right now,
Uh-huh.
and trusting that when it is the time and when it is the book, like it'll be time. So I'm just
Okay.
holding on that for a minute. And I think God's putting me where I need to be. And I think that He's arranging circumstances and events the way that they're meant to be. And I think I'm going to know when it's like the moment to be like, okay, let's go, if
Right,
that makes sense.
right. Does that book have a faith component in it?
A little bit,
Okay.
but probably if I wrote it today, it would probably look really different. And that's one
Mm-hmm.
of the reasons why I'm kind of like, I know the next book that I put out is going
Mm-hmm.
to have a huge faith component to
Mm-hmm.
it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I
Yeah.
think I'm still like, am I going to go in and adjust this book, or
Mm-hmm.
am I going to start
Mm-hmm.
something completely new? And I'm still allowing that to kind of come to me, if that
That's,
makes
yeah,
sense. Yeah,
totally. I
yeah,
mean, that's part of being faithful, right? Is you'll
exactly.
know, you'll totally know.
Exactly. And I feel that. I feel
Mhm.
that so deeply. Yeah.
Yeah. You often talk about vocation, right? Like our work being our passion, being kind of like what we're here to do in our
Yeah.
lifetime. And yet you're also so driven financially.
Yeah.
Um, how do you kind of marry those two concepts? Because I sometimes feel that if I'm just
Yeah.
vocation driven, my work is about serving,
Yeah.
and maybe it's just like a mindset thing I got to change. But sometimes I think service isn't necessarily an exchange of cash, right, or money.
Yeah.
So
There,
how do
there's all
you
different
think about
ways to
that?
be, yeah, there's all different ways. I always look at it like, how do we make money and do good? Right. And for me, the biggest thing that I've learned is the bigger impact you want to make, the more money you have to create in order to make that impact. And
Right.
so
Mm-hmm.
like one of my goals, for example, with VBS, that's my newest business. It's called the Virtual Business School. It's like a year old. And my goal is to get it profitable enough with paid students that we can actually bring it to third world countries and enroll millions of people around the globe for free and actually bring business education to developing countries
Yeah.
where they could never pay for it, and that's fine. But for me, in order to fund that,
Yes.
I have to be very financially savvy and
Mm-hmm.
get the business to be very profitable in order to make that happen. And I've learned that with almost all of my companies. Like when I want to build a well, right? And I've built two wells and I want to build another well this year through Charity Water. And like I have to be able to fund that,
Right.
right? Everything that you want to do, you have to be able to fund. So I think making money and doing good like very much go hand in hand. I think you can do things strictly for the purpose or goal of being
Mm-hmm.
of service, and it doesn't need to have a financial component to it.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I look at a lot of the good I want to do in the world, and a lot of it has to do with reach and impact.
Mm-hmm.
And in order for me to reach people and in order for me to impact, there has to be a lot of cash behind that. So those two things are very interconnected. But there's things you can do in your own community, like going and volunteering at the church, to be a part of giving back. And I'm so excited. Madison's at the age now where I'm like really, ready to get started doing more like community service with her and getting
Mm-hmm.
involved with the church. And she's actually going to be helping out at the church this summer, which I'm super happy about. So I mean, I think that there's all different ways that
Mm-hmm.
you can make money and all different ways that you can do good. And some of them you make money and do good, and some of them you just do good, and some of them you just make money, and that's fine
Right.
too. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Totally.
Yeah.
As we come to a close here, I'm wondering if there's two or three pieces of advice you can give folks that if you were just now launching your businesses or going growing to that next level, let's say the 6 to 7 figure mark,
Yeah.
what do you wish you knew then that you know now?
Oof, just patience, right?
Hmm.
It's the cadence and the repetition of compounding over time, which is the last thing that anyone wants to hear, and I fully recognize that. But
Yeah.
that's what it is. That's what it is. It is the cadence of consistency over time. So being visible, being
Hmm.
behind the microphone, being on camera, getting out and serving people, doing as many of these. I mean, my team was off yesterday. I did 7 podcasts yesterday. Okay. So, it's being visible, it's getting out there, it's adding value, it's being consistent with what your non-negotiables are.
Right.
Um, we live in a world where it's like any dream you can dream, you can make true,
Yeah.
right? Like there
So
is
true.
so much abundance of opportunity and possibility. And it's just up to us to make sure that we're creating an alignment between what we say that we want and then what we're doing to
Hmm.
make it happen,
Hmm. Hmm. One more question, because you mentioned something in this one that made me think of something else. You mentioned the importance of visibility. What is your advice to people who struggle with being comfortable being visible?
The only way you get comfortable being visible is being visible.
Yeah.
My first videos are horrendous, not because I was a bad speaker. I was in sales. I ran teams and meetings and all those things, but I was so nervous
Yes.
and not comfortable in my own skin, that those first videos were horrible because I was just so nervous, overthinking what I was doing. And it was just by doing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of videos, you don't even see the camera anymore. You're just having a conversation. So the only way you get comfortable is repetition.
Hmm. Yeah,
Repetition.
so true. So
Yeah.
true. Well, my dear, where is the best place for people to learn about you and your incredible business programs?
Yes. Oh my gosh, thank you. So definitely the Kelly Roach Show.
Hmm.
I always tell people like, come listen to the podcast. It will change your life. And the episodes are like 20 minutes or less.
Yeah.
So start with the Kelly Roach Show and then, DM me on Facebook or Instagram. You can just DM me the word mentor if you want to learn more about, the different solutions that we have for entrepreneurs to help them grow. And I'd love to connect with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rachel.